It's the 8th of the 7th, 2025. The time is 6 minutes past 8. That means, therefore, there are a very many F1-centric threads at which we need to pull. It's the day after, the night before, the post-mortem of the British Grand Prix, and there are very many narrative and plot lines. Music is life, Jomo, Franz, mood, and it will get techier than techie things over there. We'll try and go long, 30 minutes plus potentially, depending on how long 8,000-year-old Cameron CC's endurance can last. We'll talk about Colapinto. So too, we'll talk about Lando Norris. Lucky Lando, some are saying. Helmut Marko's dialed in and he's got something to say. Oscar Piastri's reaction, scorched earth Oscar Piastri for once, and what that might mean for the championship going forward. And McLaren too. So too, we'll talk about Lewis, Cole, Davidson, Hamilton, and more broadly Scuderia Ferrari. We've got a test coming, but Lewis won't be in attendance. We'll talk about Mohammed Ben Sulayem and his reign of terror. Bring back not V10s, but V8s. In the first instance, let's talk about one Franco Colapinto, because the boys and girls over at the race are saying, officially confirming that there was an approach from Fabio to one Valtteri Bottas, an inquiry to see if Mercedes would release their old steed Valtteri to deputise or supersede even one Franco Colapinto. The well, as far as financial resources, has run dry, no longer offsetting the DNFs, the DNSs, the poor performances, the material mismatch as versus what Franco's doing on the track versus what Fabio anticipates. For the avoidance of doubt, the context is as follows. Fabio was brought on to do one thing: increase the asset value of the company so that they can spin it off. 1.5, 1.6 billion is the asset value that some are saying they're looking for. And in order to do that, they need two drivers who are doing bits optimizing for their not insubstantial opportunity. Franco Colapinto comes with sponsorship, but his material underperformance isn't good enough. The boys and girls over at the race are saying that Franco Colapinto might get a couple more races. However, lest we forget, his original contract was 5 races. 5 races was last race, wasn't it? He'll get at least until the end of the summer break before Fabio Briatore wields the sword of Damocles. Going to take it. Colapinto is hitting the Tiffy levels. Not quite, Michael. I think you're being a bit harsh. Not quite, but nearly. It's techier than techie things for Franco. I would argue potentially Jack do. When you look at the results race by race, Jack wasn't doing so well, and Franco Colapinto, and they're almost neck. They're close enough. As Nero's makes no difference. Same. Meaning, therefore, if you're getting like 10 to 20 million US dollars because of Franco Colapinto's Mercado Libre sponsorship, then why not keep him? Oh, and by the way, around Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, it's getting techier than techie things, chat. Pyramid, you're a legend. It is getting techier. Here's what I mean by this. Was Lando lucky? In the first instance, there's a Motorsport magazine article claiming that potentially Lando benefited from fortuitous circumstances, that but for the racing god smiling down upon him by dint of Maximilian Verstappen's mistake and Oscar Piastri's uncharacteristic lapse in judgment, Lando Norris would not have had a chance. He would have been bottom step of the podium, not the top one. And I think they've got some. I think there's something to this, chat. I'll be honest with you. Not to say I don't want to diminish Lando. This is a time to celebrate who Lando is, winning his maiden voyage at his home Grand Prix and all that good stuff. A dream come true. I'd exchange all of my accolades, even Monaco, if that meant that I could win my home race. Bravo, Lando. Do you know what I mean? Standing ovation settings. But when you pass out the many causation threads, if you look at the process forensically, you've got to confess, right? Surely you've got to lean into the fact that it was Oscar Piastri to lose, and he lost it by dint of him stepping on the brake panel to the tune of 59.2 PSI. What are you doing, Oscar? This makes no sense, chap. You've been all season long, as near as makes no difference, perfect. So why are you doing that now, Oscar? This makes no bloody sense. Now, as far as Oscar Piastri, post-race, he was raging, right? And why is this a news story? Well, because Oscar Piastri's always flatlined season to date, career to date. His mum went on a podcast recently and said the only time when she's seen him get ever so slightly flustered is when his mum They both of them were on a bike ride, and his mum crashed. And then all of a sudden, she saw a different countenance on his face for the first time. He was worried. Therefore, an F1 car can't fluster this chap. Do you know what I mean? Max Verstappen, nor Lando Norris, nor the travails and physics problems posed to him by a Suzuka or a Spa. That doesn't faze Oscar Piastri. He's here always, not so after the British Grand Prix. Said a couple of different things. I was going to try and load up the clips, but do you know what I mean? We'll recount them because that's probably more impactful. Here's what Oscar Piastri said. In the first instance, he said, "I'm not sure if I deserved the race win, but what I did deserve is the race lead. My mistake wasn't that severe to warrant 10 seconds. I may be at F1 Arcade on London." Let's go, F1 boy, and thank you for the continuing support. Let's go, F1 Arcade. I was there the other day and it wasn't too bad. Listen, we'll talk about F1 Arcade another time, I promise. Go on then. Oscar, I deserve the lead. I deserve the lead. He said, "I didn't do anything different to what I'd done a couple laps earlier. Whilst the FIA investigated that, he wasn't punished for it, but the circumstance were ever so slightly different. The lights on the safety car had gone out. He was more aggressive on the brakes then. It was wet conditions as versus George Russell at the Canadian Grand Prix. And so a different circumstance would merit a different type of punishment if one at all. Of course, the circumstances, George at the Canadian Grand Prix and Oscar at this, the circumstances were similar, but they were not the same. The stewards, if I'm going to defend them for a couple of seconds, they need to judge each and every single instance on its own, in and of its own merits. Those McLaren kids are sport brats. Oh, music is life. Nope. I used to think Lando was damn good until Oscar arrived. He is Brett. Oh, you can't say anything. Lando was the one who kept his head, Terence. I don't disagree. He did enough. But again, that doesn't mean that that's mutually exclusive from benefiting from fortuitous circumstances. Oscar fuming. And, of course, he asked the question, man. Now, if we believe that this 10 seconds is unjust, why aren't we going to invert? Oscar in the post-race press conference said he knew that that was unfair, but he was going to ask it anyway. And I think that sets the scene. It's something of an inflection point for the championship of the drivers' variety going forward. I don't think Oscar Piastri is going to pull any punches anymore. And he shouldn't, because he wants himself a championship of the drivers, not even the constructors. I don't think he'd care. You put a microphone in front of Oscar's face and talk to him about constructors. I imagine he'd say, "What's that?" Drivers is all that he's focused on, and he wants it. It cannot be shared. Two people cannot have the same thing in Oscar and Lando, and so Oscar's going to go for it. I'd argue that he should have won at Austria. Turn 6, he had the opportunity, and again, another uncharacteristic faux pas from Oscar OJ Piastri. It's techie, this. It is techie, and then you come to find out another wrinkle. Can you imagine? McLaren said that were there a safety car circumstance, that they would have pit them both. Oscar Piastri had track position and Lando Norris was in second, meaning therefore, since it was mandatory that Oscar served himself a 10-second penalty, they would have double stacked and Lando would have had to serve it to the humanity. The extent of the fortuitous circumstances as far as Lando Norris's race win knows no bounds. Safak says, in the race, yes, but in qualifying, he had bad luck with the same red flag. And before the red flag, he had already worked his way up front. Used agreed, trying to make a statement to Max, even though he was incredibly stupid. Mood says, people seem to hate that. Me personally, I love that he asked for it. Why wouldn't he ask for it? Why wouldn't he ask for it? Let's talk. We'll talk about Louis. In fact, let's talk about Mohammed Ben Sulayem first, because this is important, chat. Mohammed Ben Sulayem, Mr. Reign of Terror himself, says that, listen, this hasn't been a reign of terror. What are you talking about? I've been transparent, robust governance at each and every single time. What is he on about? Let me read out what he said. He's talking about engines, power units specifically, one in V8s and no longer V10s. I'll read out what he said and then we'll react to it and I'll explain potentially where it might emanate from. He says, quote, to us, the V8 is happening. With the teams now, I'm very optimistic about it, happy about it. Formula One management are supportive. The teams are realising it is the right way. We need to do it soon. You need 3 years, so hopefully by 2029 we have something there. But the fuel is also very expensive, and we have to be very careful with that. Transmissions are expensive. The current engines continues MBS are so complicated you have no idea, and it is costly. R&D, research and development, is reaching $200 million per year. Per year in brackets, by the way, unsaid. And the engine is costing approximately 1.8 million to 2.1 million. So if we go over straight V8, let's see. Go on then, all of a sudden, and the context is this. Mohammed Ben Sulayem is nothing if not invested in MBS PLC. You know already that there are connections to DP World, who in turn have connections to Cadillac F1. Some insiders in the paddock, some of those in the know, say that that's got something to do with the reason why that Cadillac F1 were rushed through as the 11th entrant in F1, allegedly. Now all of a sudden you come to find out that Cadillac F1 will come in F1, will start their tenure in F1 in 2026, loaning out Ferrari engines until, some say, 2028. In 2028 at the start of, they'll come with their own engine, which by the way is the reason why that apparently they were authorized to become the 11th entrant. That makes no sense. If that was the reason why, surely they need to bring that in 2026 when they start, but apparently not. Alas, 2028, 2029, Cadillac F1 will be an engine manufacturer, or GM per se, will be an engine manufacturer in Formula One. That's the word on the F1 curb. And then all of a sudden, Mohammed Ben Sulayem wants to broach the topic of bringing in V10s, not in 2028 or 2026. Let's do it now. Let's forget about the brand new rules and regs, the 50% powertrain driven by electric, 50% driven by ICE, internal combustion engine. Let's forget about that. Let's just do V10s as if lead time isn't a thing, as if the likes of Mercedes haven't been pummeling 120 million US dollars into R&D for the 2026 power unit for years now. Can you imagine? I wonder why Mohammed Ben Sulayem would say that. Has it got anything to do with the fact that Cadillac will be researching an engine unit, a power unit, to run it only for 2 years, potentially? If you wipe the slate clean, full stop new paragraph settings, and bring in a brand new, I don't know, V8, then everybody's starting from scratch, right? Nobody has a head start, and this is what is this I feel is the tree up which Mohammed Ben Sulayem is barking. Go on then, Mohammed Ben Sulayem continues. V8s I don't think would be too bad, to be fair. V8s, V10s in principle, whatever, bringing more noise. So when you hear Carlos Sainz talking about getting into an F1 car for the first time, the fact that it put hairs on his chest and goosebumps, I concur. F1 is soundtrack as much as it's audio, as much as it's visual. Surely bring back V10s, bring back V8s, whatever. V6s, however, with this bloody, they're silent, isn't it? It's not good enough. But again, the rationale behind it has got to be key. It shouldn't be, if you are the FIA president, money motivated. MBS continues. The time will come when we feel it is right to open up an expression of interest, because we're keen to expand into North Asia. A Chinese team, therefore, would be good. Quote, we are not here to upset other teams. We won't just go out and do it for the sake of doing it. It has to be worth it for us. The team has to add value to sustaining the business of Formula One. Yeah, you think Cadillac F1 are going to add value to the sustaining the business of... This is what I don't get. This is what perturbs me, and what I will not make any apology for. Roasting MBS. It's so loud, the lack of transparency. It's nonsense. At this stage, this has nothing to do with the reason why Cadillac F1 were rubber stamped. What are you talking about? He goes on to talk about his reign hasn't been a reign of terror. What? What are you saying, MBS? Reign of terror. You've appointed 1,000 gazillion people, and 1,000 gazillion people have since left. The rate of churn speaks to something that's more insidious, terminal, gangrene as far as the FIA organisation. The audit members, 2 or 4 of them have been sacked. You're running an authoritarian regime. Therefore, MBS, you can't look anyone in their eye with a straight face and deny that yours is a reign of terror. Not at this stage. It's because the MGUH, that the V6, yeah, no, agreed, visual. They need to change, whatever, they need to change it. Jomer, you're a legend. They need to change, just change it. Change it, what's the point? One of the reasons why I got into Formula 1 in the first instance was because of the bloody sound. When my old man Cameron Senior was watching it, I could hear it from upstairs and I was intrigued. What sounds like this? This sounds like the devil is coming. Like I'm intrigued. What is going on? I'm intrigued. And so to take that away from Formula 1, the soundtrack that so punctuated some of our lives and some of our routes into Formula 1 in the first instance is a sham. It's a shame. It's a nonsense. Oh, and by the way, should we talk some Lewis Hamilton and Scuderia Ferrari? Frederick Vasseur says Joe Saywood will not get his contract extended despite the exterior, the support of one modern day journalese, proper modern day journalese, aka Charles Leclerc, and one Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. Lewis said that I wouldn't even be at Ferrari but for Frederick Vasseur. Charles Leclerc quite openly gave all of his support, vocally at the very least, to one Frederick Vasseur. But I'm not sure that's going to be enough, chat. It sounds and feels and looks like the Italian press and media aren't supporting this dude. Yes, the CEO came out yesterday and said, you know what, we've got time. I'm going to sit down with Fred. I think we're going to give him time. We're going to have a chat. We're going to be open and honest going forward. That was the vote of confidence that we expected to see weeks ago, lest we forget at the Austrian Grand Prix, Fred Vasseur had personal issues and had to vacate his seat as team principal on the pit wall. Why? Porque? What's the reason? Originally, the gossip, the chatter was that it was something to do with family bereavement, but that's since been poo-pooed. So why was it then? You can't expect people not to do the apophenia thing and connect dots that shouldn't be connected as far as causation, lest you give a bloody reason in the first instance. Of course, people are going to plug the gaps, make up their own theories and suppositions as to why Frederick Vasseur wasn't on the grid on the pit wall of Ferrari at Austria. He's the team principal, for Pete's sake. And then let's talk about the car, because they need to fix it. Lewis Hamilton has been moaning ad infinitum in perpetuity, quite rightfully so, because the car's been a dog. As soon as it was raining, he had no chance. The downforce wasn't there. He's been talking about the lack of rigidity at the rear, meaning that he can't push the car through the medium to high speed turns. And again, you remove Lewis Hamilton's greatness, what's made him a brilliant peddler, one of the best that we've ever seen, first round Hall of Fame, Mount Rushmore of F1 all these years. If you take away, in the first instance, his ability to be last of the late breakers, adapting now is he to the Brembo brakes, no longer the ones that he's grown so accustomed to in CI, carbon industry, over at the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth. This is difference. This is acclimatization settings for Sir Lewis. So then we need to give him some grace, right? And with a view to fix for the multitudinous mechanical and aerodynamic foibles and travails of the SF25, there is talks, per the Gazzetta, of a test incoming. Again, with a view to broaden the operating window within which that SF25 is running. All important. Again, we're talking about the brakes. Lewis will need to get used to those, but primarily we're talking about the suspension at the rear. What's going on with that Ferrari is that you get the best out of it per the ground effect cars when you run it lowest to the grid, to the track even. But then you've got to balance that. Excessive plank wear will get you DQ'd, as it did Sir Lewis at the Chinese Grand Prix. So what do you do to mitigate for that? You broaden the operating window of the car, for Pete's sake. Rigidity of the suspension at the rear will help with that. Give them the ability to run it lower without wearing the plank excessively. There will be a test at Mugello within the next couple of weeks, at which you would expect Sir Lewis to be, surely. Lewis, lest we forget, at the British Grand Prix said, listen, it feels like we're building as far as reliability, dependability at the rear. What I can't do is depend on it if it's snap oversteer to understeer around the low minimum speed turns, snap oversteer around the quick twisties I can't get the confidence that I need to push the car to optimise for lap time. Therefore, Lewis Hamilton's words, not mine. He went a step further, seeing you that and raising you this. Here's what Lewis said. He goes, it feels like we build and build and build 2 steps forwards and then 20 back. Every single time we're in the middle of a session, FP1, FP2, we look gangbusters, fastest of all, topping the timesheets. But then we get into Q1 and we've taken 2 steps back at the altar of instability at the rear. I need the confidence. Lewis Hamilton quite literally pulling his hair out, so frustrated was he. Then you come to find out that there will be a test. Frederick Vasseur said there are upgrades coming at the incoming Grand Prix. Spa-Francorchamps will be the next one. And Ferrari aspire to bring upgrades that fix for those. But between now and then, there will be a test at Mugello. It will focus on the suspension at the rear. Therefore, surely both Charles Leclerc, who also complains of these things, and Lewis will be at those tests. The Gazette writes Lewis Hamilton will not be there. What? What's going on here, chat? Now, of course, listen, let me put forth the Lewis Hamilton case. Lewis Hamilton's a busy man. He's 40 years old. He's got things doing. Fanatec stores to be opening. Do you know what I mean? Met Gala, F1 movie premieres to be attending. Maybe he wants to spend some time with his family. Maybe he's tired. Maybe he can't be asked to go back to Mugello and test the rear suspension. Maybe it's not even his turn. Maybe just like the FP1 allocations, it was meant to be Giovinazzi and Charles Leclerc. Maybe it's nothing to do with Sir Lewis. Maybe Lewis is tired of Scuderia Ferrari, the red car and the yellow badge and the black prancing Corsa top already. Maybe a portion of all of the aforementioned. But when I hear Lewis saying things like these, and I quote, it's the most difficult car I've driven here in a few years. I struggled to keep up. The tyres dropped off massively. The car was unbelievably tricky to drive. Ultimately, I learned a lot today. It's only my second time driving this car in the wet. I can't even express to you how hard it was. When Lewis is saying things like that, he's a 7-time champion. He's Mr. Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton, GOAT settings, Mount Rushmore of F1, first round Hall of Fame. When he's saying things like that, I would expect him to be present though, to try and solve for the ills, the multitudinous ills and travails of that SF25, rooted of course at the altar of instability at the rear. They're testing a suspension. The suspension, by the way, that Lewis Hamilton has been complaining about ad infinitum over the past few races. So too Charles Leclerc, and Lewis Hamilton won't be in attendance. Make of that what you will. Maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe I am being too harsh. Tell me in the chat if you think I'm being too scathing on Lewis. Maybe he doesn't need to be there. I don't know. You guys let me know. Max is faster than them all. I don't disagree with you, lazy. But to that point, let's talk about Helmut Marko. He said some things and I'm like, flipping nowhere, Helmut. Again, the bloody context is as follows. Red Bull are losing lots. People, Wheatley, Marshall, Newey. Everybody's leaving that team. Don't tell me anymore with a straight face that Enrico Balbo and Pierre Vacher are suitable, fit for purpose to solve for this car. Yeah, once every couple of races around, I don't know, a Silverstone, they'll get Maximilian Verstappen to drag that RB21 kicking and screaming back to the mountaintop. Maybe. But I would argue that Max still, as have many Red Bull insiders, flatter to deceive. That car is nowhere. Don't look at it in the hands of Maximilian Verstappen to understand its true capability. Have a look at it in the hands of Tsunoda-san, and where's he been? Last of the finishers, as near as makes no difference. Every single bloody race at this point. That's where Red Bull are, and that's why the biggest story over the next couple of weeks on this soft land, this pre-summer break, the biggest story that people are going to be talking about is the future of Maximilian Verstappen. And when you hear Helmut Marko talking like this with this tone, the only conclusion that one can come to is that Max Verstappen will leave that team. Why would he stay, chat? For what? Because of loyalty. What? At Red Bull, loyalty. Christian Horner and Jos Verstappen still beefing in the background. Apparently, allegedly, if word on the F1 curb is something in which you're invested. Apparently, Christian Horner litigation going on in the background about which no UK press and media can speak, allegedly. So what are we doing here? Make the case to me. Play devil's advocate with me for a second. Why, sans loyalty, why would Maximilian Verstappen hang around that Milton Keynes team? Why? If, of course, Max Verstappen wants to win. Let me replay back to you what he said when asked whether he was going to stay at Red Bull last year. He said, listen, I need a couple of things, a car, the people, and bloody harmony at the team. He has none of those things. What are we doing? Hamilton needs a B12 injection. Behave yourself. It's, if not for the rain, lazy potentially. You couldn't grasp my point, but the guy has a mouth. No class from the McLaren boys on the podium. Go on, let's talk about this actually. In fact, let me do we'll finish Red Bull and then we'll come on to the McLaren boys again, because people aren't too pleased at the way they celebrated or didn't celebrate Hulkenberg. So go on then. Here's what Helmut Marko said. He's come out and he's done some sort of admission of sorts. And hearing him talk like that, nothing if not a truth sayer, Dr. Helmut Marko of Red Bull GmbH. He said of the British Grand Prix that it was very difficult to come close to McLaren, a superior McLaren. That he uses those words, those types of superlatives. For me, is telling. I think they're looking their mortality in looking directly at their own mortality, realising the extent of it. Indeed, they are drowning in it at Red Bull. They are nowhere. 69 points is the delta between Max and Oscar Piastri as at race 12. Half the distance or halfway through the Drivers' Championship. What are we doing? This makes no sense. Red Bull gives you wings. Behave yourself. Are you having a giraffe? They need to fix back the bloody guy. I saw Adrian Newey looking at the McLaren. I've yet to see Pierre Vacher or Enrico Balbo patrolling the grid, trying to look at McLaren for tips. And this is why I don't think they're fit for purpose. They don't have what Adrian Newey has. They don't have that. They're not intellectually curious, or at least they don't appear to be. Maybe this is me doing a Pufferneer and causation and correlation. Me falling foul of dots that shouldn't be connected, potentially not being sufficiently close to the circumstance. But listen, here's what Dr. Helmut Marko said. We were prepared for a dry race, he told Service TV. According to the weather forecast, that would be possible. That would have been a possibility. Lest we forget, going into Sunday, there was 20% chance of rain, wasn't there? But we saw that in the wet conditions, we couldn't keep up at all because we didn't have enough downforce. Even at the end of the race, we were trailing by 30 seconds. There's still some things coming as far as upgrades, Dr. Helmut Marko says, but it's all not enough. We won't even come close to McLaren. So superior are they. Oh, the humanity. Franz, he was studying it like a hawk. Where's bloody Balbo and Pierre Vacher doing the same thing? No way, Sherlock. I'm telling you, it's chaos. Dr. Helmut Marko coming out and making a shocking admission that sadly for Red Bull and Maximilian Verstappen and Christian Horner, as far as his tenure as TP of the Bulls that are red, sadly for each and every single one of them, McLaren are just too good, too superior. At the altar, of course, of the double brake that they've got, which facilitates or enables them to mitigate and or minimise God tier minimization of their tyre. Their tyres don't deg. So get around hot tracks like, I don't know, Spa, Francorchamps, potentially, or a Singapore upcoming. Get around those tracks and you've got no chance. Lando and Oscar are going to be a gazillion miles down the road. Yes, Red Bull gives you wings again, notice. Ugh. YT sucks. Why does YT suck? You could be Oscar and Lando's only ever shot at F1 Championship. 100%. I don't disagree. Was sliding everywhere and still putting it in the top 5. It wasn't a bad recovery drive for Max, worthy of some driver of the day accolades. Yes, New was scanning that McLaren. Yeah. Go on then. Let's talk about this McLaren stuff, because a lot of people in the community are fuming that Oscar and Lando got on the podium and didn't give the Hulkenberg, the first, potentially final Hulkenberg podium, the respect that it so deserved. That where were they? Why weren't they showering him with champagne? Where was that? Where was the deference to a legend in Nico Hulkenberg finally getting over the line and finally nailing himself for third place. Pyramid scheme. Oh, the humanity. What are we doing here? I get it, and I get that some people have hate Lando and Oscar for doing one of these blinker settings. I understand it, but bloody Nora, give them some grace, surely. Like, they haven't. I would argue this from Oscar's perspective. One of the few times he's on the podium and he's fuming. He's iced off, per se. Lando Norris, it's his maiden victory at his home Grand Prix. Surely we've got to extend that chap some grace. Therefore, in that sense, these two have got their own things dealing with. Extend them a little bit of grace, therefore, for their being blinkered, appearing to be selfish, I think. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what you expected from them. They're young boys. Lando Norris, how old is he? 25, 26. Oscar Piastri, 24, 25. I mean, I think we can forgive them in this instance. They are McLaren. They are young boys fighting for a championship. And in that instance, when they're on the podium, that's all that they can think of. Yeah, it would have been nice to do a cheeky fist bump with Hulkenberg. Congratulations, settings, something like that. But I can forgive them, in my humble opinion. Just this once, they gave Nico a Lego trophy. And then Oscar Piastri was saying in the post-race presser, wasn't he? He said, how do you feel, Nico, to finally fight through all these 15 years, finally get yourself a podium, and it's a Lego trophy? To which Nico said, I like Lego. My daughter likes Lego, so I'm okay with that. It's the third place that matters, Oscar. How very dare you, mate? Why don't you think about your own 59.2 PSI instance, young Oscar? YouTube forgets to send notifications sometimes. Behave yourself, Daniel. I hope that's not the truth. Just make sure you click the bell, and then click all notifications, and then you're good. I'm 26. When I show a bit of eyebrow action, I'm sent to HR. It's techie. Lando and Oscar, says Visual, will be with Hulk for 20 minutes before the podium celebration. They can't be enthusiastic. It's a good shout, Visual. You apply some reality to the circumstance that devoids me. It's techier than techie things. Over the next couple of weeks, it's going to get chaotic. Expect a couple of things. It will be driver's silly season. It will be where George Russell is heading. What's going on with Fernando Alonso? Over to Alpine again, potentially, to replace Colapinto, potentially. Is Alonso a bum in an Alpine seat? The reason why Fabio Briatore isn't in any rush to replace him with a Doohan or a Valtteri Bottas, potentially. But then who gets the Aston Martin seat? Is it George? Is it somebody else? Would they promote a young, hungry lion like, I don't know, an Arvid Lindblad? Could they pry Arvid Lindblad away from Red Bull? I don't think so. But then ultimately, what happens to Maximilian Verstappen? It's a conversation that we're going to have. Is he going to stay at Red Bull? Does he have performance clauses in his contract that he can effect as at the 31st of this month? Particularly of the driver championship variety. If Maximilian Verstappen is outside the top 2 or the top 3 as at July the 31st, then he will be outside the top 2. Can he null and void his contract? Those are the big bloody questions. I would argue this way. If I apply some semblance of F1 common sense, I think Jos Verstappen would have made sure that top 2 as a performance clause was in Max's contract. So too top 3 in the constructors. If conjecture and speculation is something you can indulge for a second, you will be outside of both of those as at the 31st. Gonna get techie. I'm telling you, it is gonna get techie. Meaning, therefore, that those conversations with Toto, the boy who cried off, initiated by Team Verstappen, might yield fruit yet and still might come to fruition. Maybe Maximilian Verstappen's had enough. Maybe he goes to Aston Martin still, but I think the most likely outcome, not that this will transpire or happen even, but the most likely outcome is that Maximilian Verstappen finds himself over at the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth. That story will continue to develop over the next weeks and months, particularly as we near the 31st, when some of these performance clauses could come into effect. Null and void settings for Maximilian Verstappen and the balls that are red. It's going to get techie than techie things, chat. By the humanity.